All righty, good morning, and sorry for being a tad late. And everybody here is asking where the handouts are. Usually I have them on the table, and it's because I'm going, well, actually, it doesn't make any difference. You had a chance to see them already. I was going to say, you've seen, sorry. I was going to put you under the gun and have a little bit of a quiz, but then it just occurred to me that I sent this all out in email, so you probably have seen it and you know the answers anyway, so no fun in that. Let us have a word of prayer. God of grace and everlasting glory, we give you thanks for this day, the sunshine, the beauty of creation, and we come once again that we might ponder the sacred words of long ago. We know you are waiting for us to bless us with your wisdom, and for that we give you thanks and praise. In Jesus' name, amen. All righty, so good morning, Shelley. Thank you for joining us. So we have a challenge this morning. Last week, your challenge was not to mess my sermon up. This morning, it is to help me refine it. I have a general idea of where I'm going with it, but I need to find that one little kernel of wisdom that brings it all together. And we are going to be looking at the relationship that Jesus had with his mother. And we know that after the nativity story, which is only found in Luke's gospel, Mary appears 4 more times, okay? So you know all 4 of them. Which one is first?
When he was born.
Oh, after he was born.
8 days after he's born.
Well, I include the dedicating him in the temple as part of the birth narrative, but yeah. Right. So the first time Mary shows up after Jesus is born is when Jesus is 12 years old, and the famous story of him getting left behind. The next one. That would be correct, because that is the beginning of his ministry. John says that this was the first of his miracles. Now, I suppose you could say that Jesus went a while before he performed a miracle, but generally it's assumed that this was at the very beginning of his ministry. And then the third time, obviously, when Jesus is teaching in the house and someone says your mother and your brothers are waiting outside for you. And then the last time Mary shows up is at the cross. And actually, there's another time, and that's when she goes to the tomb on Easter morning. But so I've got all 4 readings queued up. I'm going to listen to them one after another.
Now his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up according to custom. And when the feast was ended, as they were returning, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. His parents did not know it. But supposing him to be in the group, they went a day's journey, but then they began to search for him among their relatives and acquaintances. And when they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem searching for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. And when his parents saw him, they were astonished. And his mother said to him, "Son, why have you treated us so? Behold, your father and I have been searching for you in great distress." And he said to them, "Why were you looking for me? Did you not know that I must be in my father's house?" And they did not understand the saying that he spoke to them. And he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was submissive to them. And his mother treasured up all these things in her heart.
Okay, that's encounter number 1. Let's move on to. Yes, no, I understand.
John 2. On the 3rd day there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus also was invited to the wedding with his disciples. When the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, they have no wine. And Jesus said to her, Woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come. His mother said to the servants, Do whatever he tells you. Now there were 6 stone water jars there for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, Fill the jars with water. And they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, Now, draw some out and take it to the master of the feast. So they took it. When the master of the feast tasted the water now become wine, and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, Everyone serves the good wine first, and when people have drunk freely, then the poor wine. But you have kept the good wine until now. This, the first of his signs, Jesus did at Cana in Galilee, and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him.
All right, moving on to the third one. And this is in Matthew's Gospel. And
While he was still speaking to the people, behold, his mother and his brothers stood outside asking to speak to him. But he replied to the man who told him, Who is my mother, and who are my brothers? And stretching out his hand toward his disciples, he said, Here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother.
And then last but not least, I actually queued this up a little before what you see printed in front of you.
When the soldiers had crucified Jesus, they took his garments and divided them into 4 parts, 1 part for each soldier, also his tunic. But the tunic was seamless, woven in one piece from top to bottom. So they said to one another, Let us not tear it, but cast lots for it to see whose it shall be. This was to fulfill the scripture which says, They divided my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. So the soldiers did these things. But standing by the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister, Mary the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother, Woman, behold your son. Then he said to the disciple, Behold your mother. And from that hour, the disciple took her to his own home.
All righty. So, questions, comments, and conundrums.
Let's see, in that last one, do we know who that disciple is?
That's John.
Oh, that is
Yep, the beloved disciple. Let me see, where does it say? And the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to the disciple, Behold your mother. Interestingly enough, the beloved disciple is the disciple who wrote those words. So it's almost as if he's saying, Jesus loved me best. Yes, that's right. So here we have, yes, Don.
The first question is, what do the 4 have?
Yeah, what do they have in common?
He divides the maternal relationship in the way he refers to her.
Say again now?
He calls her woman, not mother.
Oh, he calls her woman. Yeah, it's interesting because I think that may have been a cultural thing, and it reflects the attitude maybe toward women in general back then. But your point is well taken. It's a way of referring to her that certainly isn't bringing them closer together. Yep.
I feel like there was some distance between him and his mother versus him and the Lord, and
Okay.
that I see in the temple where.
Sure. So let's look at that. And first of all, isn't it heresy to say that Jesus didn't exactly have a Hallmark card relationship with his mother?
No,
I mean, don't you think of the Holy Family as Ozzie and Harriet on steroids?
I do think it's he's not just being a little precocious, I know it all, and I know the scripture backwards and forwards and edgewise. it is almost like from the age 11, he has an internal knowledge of his role, not only to his parents, but to the world as of itself. And so that basically he is really taking kind of a worldview where he's realized from a very early age his role, and he is treating everyone in the world as a universal family, or wishes them to be a universal
So
family.
she's no more special than anyone else, is that what you said?
Well, he realizes, yes, it is because we see in from the cross that he wishes his mother to be cared for, but at the same time he's taking a view as a dutiful son who is concerned about the world as a whole.
I like in verse
Yep.
50 where he said, and his mother treasured up all these things in her heart.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, it's very, and his mother treasures up all these things in her heart. Yes.
I always thought it was interesting that she seems in the birth story to kind of guess what's going on. But then in the passage from Luke, it's like she forgot.
Oh,
It's not like, Joseph's kid. It was, he was born in a special way to save the world.
yeah. So why is she surprised that all this is
Yeah, I
happening?
just think I don't know. I mean, I know she didn't know exactly what to expect, but
Right.
it seems like she totally forgot
Mhm.
how it was conceived and brought into the world.
Yeah. And go ahead.
Mary knew he was special from the very beginning.
She absolutely did.
So she must have expected, she must not have been
Totally surprised.
totally surprised
Yeah.
at his behavior,
Mm-hmm.
but as a parent, she was still concerned about him. For example, when he was missing for 2 days. I mean,
Sure.
that's a long time to be missing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even in a group of people.
Sure.
I'm surprised that it took them
That long.
to realize that. he was missing.
Today it would be called child neglect.
Yeah, I would interpret from Tom's reference on it, that if you use Jesus' own phrase to explain it, I am of this world, I am in this world, not of this world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a relevant part. We look at him as fully human and fully divine. And certainly the nurturing of a mother in the fully human part is so essential. I mean, every living thing on earth is created
Yep.
by a mother
So-
giving birth to it.
Yep.
And that maternal drive part of a mother
Okay.
comes to what Jane said, putting all of these into her heart.
So-
All the efforts that have gone into it, I think those are the two parts of the relationship.
So it's definitely a complicated relationship. And you look at all four of these stories, and my sense is that they're painful for Mary to a certain degree.
I would think so. I think even probably, I don't know, my kids aren't geniuses, but I think they're smart. I would bet that the mother of a son who is like a bona fide genius,
Yes.
these kids go to college and they're like
Mm-hmm,
10,
mm-hmm.
I bet she can relate to all of this.
Yeah, it's,
I agree.
it's,
Yeah, I mean, Shirley and Jane know it's a weird thing, it's like when our kids are little,
Mhm.
well, even when they're older, we feel like we have to protect them.
mm-hmm,
But at a certain age with boys, when they become like older teenagers,
mm-hmm.
then they flip it on you and they want to protect you. Like they're bigger now and
Yeah.
whatever, and they're like, oh, we'll take care of you, mommy.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
It's like, wait, that's backwards, but
Yeah.
they have, and it's gotta be like that, like times a
Mhm.
million
Mhm.
for Jesus, because he probably reached, I don't know when, he was very little when he knew everything.
Yeah, it's,
Way more than his mother knew,
Yeah.
and it's gotta be weird.
yeah, it's hard to know because there is a gap in the biography. We see Jesus in the temple being dedicated, and we're told that they then flee to Egypt to destroy the child. And then we don't see or hear anything about him until he's 12 years old. And people have wondered what happened in those 12 years. And the answer is we don't know. And clearly, the gospel writers either didn't know about that period of time in his life, or they didn't think it important to the story. But clearly, yes, Mary does have a challenging relationship with Jesus.
I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that he was 12, because he's starting to get big. So maybe like he knew
Mhm,
he had to just
mhm.
go along with the flow. When you, I mean, if you're like
Yeah,
7 or 8,
yeah.
you
So
know,
here's
you're not very big, and big men that if you start like challenging them,
Mhm,
they gonna like, you know.
Mhm.
But that was right in 50, it's kind of explains the one that Jane referenced on. It references to the fact that he was submissive to them to the time.
See, and I think-
Back to human heart.
So we're focusing, that is on the story age 12 in the temple. And I think that that is an editorial comment that got added by the gospel writer, because what we see here is a Jesus who responds to his mother's concern and worry by giving an answer that if I'd ever said it to my mother, I would have been in big trouble with my father. Because look,
The time you would have said it would be when you were about 12 or 13.
yeah, about to,
It's
yes.
very, to me, it's very age appropriate.
Okay, so
Which
it's
is
it's
like
very
funny
age
because
appropriate.
he's
Yeah.
God, but
Yeah.
you know, he is supposedly fully human
But
too.
look-
So it's
look-
when the hormones start kicking.
I know, but
Get with the program.
yeah, I guess so. But it's, she says, son, why have you treated us so? Of course, totally ignoring the fact that they left him behind, but why have you treated us so? We have been in great distress. And his response is, why were you looking at me? In other words, as soon as I was noticed missing, you should have come right here.
Maybe that's the point.
Pardon me? Yeah, well, maybe he does have a point, but it's somewhat disrespectful flip to her. And then we go to the next one, and they get into an argument at this wedding. And one of the things I was always told, or I learned very quickly growing up, is the worst thing I could do is embarrass my parents in public. And that's essentially what Jesus is doing here. She comes running to him, regardless of whether it's a legitimate concern or not, and he says, woman, not mother, woman, what is that to me? My hour has not yet come. In other words, you want me because you saw me when I was 4 years old, and dad cut that board too short in his workshop, and I put my finger on it and stretched it out to the right length. That's one of the, there are some oh shoot, what's the name of it? Gospels. Gnostic Gospels, and they kind of try to fill in the gaps, although they're not considered sacred scripture.
So is that story of making a board longer in the Bible?
No, it's in one of the Gnostic Gospels. So there are all of these Gospels out there that didn't make it into sacred scripture for various legitimate reasons. And one is the Gospel according to Judas, one is the Gospel according to Mary Magdalene, another one is the Gospel according to Thomas, and it's in one of those. But it's legitimacy, its truth cannot be really confirmed because it's not found anywhere else. But again, they get into this spat, and notice that Mary, after he comes back at her, she says to the servant, "Do whatever he tells you." In other words, I'm his mother, and he's going to do what I want him to do. I don't know, but and he did, but again, a difficult encounter between the two. And then imagine how Mary must have felt when she and his brothers go to get him. And essentially what's going on here, he's in that house teaching, and she's concerned about him. She thinks that, there's something wrong with him, or even if there isn't anything wrong with him, he's going to get himself in trouble, because it's very clear that he's already butting heads with the religious authorities.
So she's being protected.
And she's come to take him home. He's come to, and so when someone says, "Hey, your mother and your brother are outside," the response, Jesus says, who are my mother and my brothers? Here are my mother and brothers. Anyone who does the will of God is my mother, my brother, my sister. I mean, if I'm Mary and I'm outside that house and somebody comes out and says, oh, Jesus says his mother and his brothers and family are in there, I mean, that's a big time ouch, wouldn't you think? It's a challenging relationship. So why does Mary go to the cross? And all four of these stories have pain in them, emotional pain for Mary. So why does she go to the cross?
She loves him.
She loves him?
Because.
Okay.
I mean, the first,
Yeah, when he's in the temple, I don't know the historically, of various Jewish rites, is he getting ready for his? When he
Yeah, that was my
preparing for
question.
his bar mitzvah?
Yeah, that's my question too.
So I would have to do, so you're referring back to the first one,
Yeah.
when he's 12.
Yes.
And I would have to do some research about bar mitzvahs and
Yeah, how far-
rites of passage in early Judaism.
Yes.
I'm not sure I know the answer to that, although one of the thoughts that went through my mind is, when does a bar mitzvah, or in the case of a woman, bat mitzvah, occur these days? How old?
It is like 13.
13.
Yeah.
13.
Right, yeah.
And how old is Jesus in the story?
Yeah.
12. So in other words, it's showing he's very precocious
Right.
because he isn't come of age yet, and here he is in the temple.
Well, it looks like when you read it, it sounds like before this, his parents went, and now he gets to go. I don't know if that's what it means, but that's how I read it. So now his parents went to Jerusalem every year, and then it says when he was 12, they.
Oh, so maybe they left him at home because he wasn't of age. Maybe.
When you're 12, you got to go. I don't know.
Yep, maybe. So, I would agree. I would agree that it's love. Mary keeps butting her head against this wall in these interactions with Jesus, and yet she still goes to the cross. And once again, it's painful for her, but this is a very different kind of pain. This is a pain of a mother seeing her child suffer. Whereas the other three stories, it's the pain of a mother who may feel rejected in some degree by her son. So yes, I would agree with you that it is her love that keeps her going through all of these challenging situations. But-
In general, you have to be pretty bad before your mother gives up on
Yeah,
you.
before your mother gives up on you, it would have to be pretty bad, yeah.
There's
Mhm.
obviously cases of
Yeah.
people not fit to be
Yeah.
mother, mental illness, or
Yeah.
whatever, but your average mother,
Mhm.
I mean, you see it in courtrooms, somebody
Oh, yeah.
accused of being this horrible murderer, and their mother is still going into court,
Yeah.
and supports them and stuff like that,
I-
you know?
This is totally unrelated, but I was reading it was online last night. It's not a story about a mother, but of a wife, a woman out, I want to say it's Utah. And her husband died about a year ago. And to help her children deal with the grief of losing their father, and he was 39, she wrote a book.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah. And now they've just arrested her because she's the one who's accused of killing the husband by giving him fentanyl. Wow. I mean, can you imagine Cole? And you look at the picture of her and she looks like this sweet thing. And I thought, oh my gosh. But,
she has children,
pardon me?
and she has children.
She has children. Yep. So back to Mary. Yes, it is love that gets her there. But what is the quality in that love that keeps her going? And I'll give you a little hint. Okay, it's a quality of love that you don't see in general a lot of times. You don't see a lot of it these days.
She had the quality of knowing that she was part, that she had participated in God's plan.
God's plan, yeah.
And she was part of,
Yes, no, yeah, absolutely.
God's
Mhm,
plan
mhm,
to bring up this child
mhm,
who
mhm.
was the son of God,
Right.
as well as being her,
And
her earthly child.
sure.
And it was this grand participation that was beyond anything she ever knew.
Mhm. But God must have seen something in her. God must have seen something in her. I mean, think about it. You think God just was up there one day and said, "Well, you know what? I'll throw a little dart down, and if it lands, whoever the woman is next to where it lands, that's the one." No, God chooses people for a reason. Just like last Sunday I was talking about the Apostle Paul. Okay, God or the Lord already had these apostles. So why does he want another apostle, particularly one who started out persecuting Christians? Because God saw something in Paul's heart that made God realize that Paul was the person who was going to be the key to the spread of this new faith. And one of the things is that Paul was a Roman citizen, which meant he could travel freely throughout the Roman Empire. So yeah, God saw something in Mary's heart that led God to say, she's the one, okay? And yes, she has a love for Jesus. And by the way, you're right, Jane, in the Magnificat, she says, henceforth all generations shall call me blessed. Okay, so, and she knew right from the very beginning, because when they take Jesus to the temple to dedicate him, and Simeon takes the child, and Latin is nunc dimittis, now let your servant depart in peace. Simeon takes the baby and says, now, Lord, let your servant depart in peace, for my eyes have seen your salvation, a light for, I'm getting a brain cramp. A light for the Gentiles and salvation for your people Israel. Okay, and then Simeon goes on and he says to Mary and Joseph, this child is destined for the rising and falling of many in Israel. And then Simeon says, to Mary, and a sword shall also pierce your heart. So right from the very beginning, she knows, she's going to be famous throughout history, and she also knows it's going to be difficult. Did she fully grasp all of that? No, I doubt it. But
She certainly didn't welcome it in the beginning.
And yes, in the beginning she didn't welcome it. Yeah, she was afraid of it. But if you were to choose one word to describe the love that kept Mary going, unconditional. Yep, I would. Yep, unconditional. What's that? Agape, yep. You see it. Yes, that's where I think, what we see in Mary is a love that is patient, okay? And I got thinking about this. If you turn to 1 Corinthians 13, the love chapter, okay? And Paul starts off by saying, if I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I'm a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have all powers and understand all mysteries and knowledge, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all I have, but have not love, I gain nothing. And then Paul says, love is patient and kind. And all of a sudden it occurred to me, maybe it isn't a coincidence that Paul puts patience at the first quality of love. It said, love is patient and kind. It's not jealous or boastful. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not rejoice in the right. It rejoices in the good, And so he gives all of these qualities, and patience is the first one. And would you say that people are patient these days? No? Okay.
Homer Simpson, isn't there anything faster than a microwave?
Say that again?
To quote Homer Simpson, isn't there anything faster than a microwave?
I never heard that one. And what does he mean by that?
Well, I mean, look how quickly you can heat something up in a microwave,
Oh.
versus when we were kids and we had to reheat in the oven. And
Oh,
that's
yes.
not even like fast enough,
Mhm.
or we want like,
Yep.
we want like that, you know?
Yep.
I mean, it's like, everybody wants, they make a decision on a purchase, of whether you're gonna get it from Amazon or that, who can deliver it quickly, rather than price, it's who can deliver it fastest.
Who can deliver a package?
You know,
Yep.
They all want, or they want,
Yeah.
or if they have any kind of a problem, no matter what it is, they want an instant solution.
Mm-hmm.
There's that instant
Well,
solution.
how do we feel when we're on a computer, we click and we have to wait a minute for it to respond?
Yep.
That seems like eternity.
Yep. Yep.
I'd like to go back.
It's like a PDF.
Right.
I'd like to go back on a perspective, because we're talking about a relationship of a mother and a child.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also talking through the venue of the Bible, which is teaching us how to live today, how to live our lives today. And I think this is hitting what we're talking about here, is that relationship between a mother and their child.
Mm-hmm.
The lessons for us, and it goes through the pain that a mother could get at certain stages of the child's development, if you will. The pain in that separation and all the ways the child goes, whatever way the child goes, the mother's still there with the love. And I think this is a lesson in how you deal with it,
Yeah.
which is, the Bible is a lesson in everything. I think that's what this is.
So yeah.
And the patience is where
Yeah.
where it is leading.
Yeah. So what I see in where I am kind of going with all of this, and I'm still working the details out, but we live in a very impatient society. And I think that the lack of patience has infected so many of our relationships, okay? That we expect our relationships, if there's a problem, that it's going to be quick and easy to fix. And, I can say that I have people come into my office and they have a relationship problem, and, they want it to be fixed quick. Yeah. And that's the thing. Relationships never were intended by God to be quick and easy. And, it's funny, I was just thinking of an old All in the Family episode. And, that show tackled all of these subjects that you just were taboo. And one of them, Edith is going through the change of life. And, she starts talking back to Archie. I mean, she even says to him, stifle. And he says, I'm the only one around here who can stifle. And so, he's told by Edith's doctor that he has to be patient, and, and it's driving him crazy. And so at one point, he jumps up from the table and he says, I've tried this and I'm not going to do it anymore. And he says, Edith, he says, I understand, they got this change thing going on. I'm going to give you 10 seconds to change. Now you've changed right now. Life is not meant, relationships are not meant to be quick and easy. So how do we cultivate that? By knowing a person, okay. And, as you were saying that, it occurred to me that, it's easy to be patient with a child when for a mother to be patient with her child. But what about, the next door neighbor who is always talking about you and others behind your back? Or what about the coworker that is always trying to get one step ahead of you, trying to climb the ladder of success, and doesn't matter if it's at your expense? Okay. How do we cultivate the patience, the love that is patient in those relationships?
That's hard, because you don't want to get walked all over.
No, you don't want to get walked on. Mhm. But a love that is patient doesn't mean that you have to invite the person over for Thanksgiving dinner.
Patient and kind usually go together.
Patient and kind go
You
together.
just have to realize that, like, you don't, I think it comes with age too, a little
Mhm.
bit. Like, you don't know what other people are going through.
Mm.
You don't,
Oh,
like, when you're a little younger, like, you really think, like, you know somebody, and then when you get older, you realize, like, it's hard to really know anybody.
So-
And, like, everybody just said, like, how are you doing? Oh, I'm fine, but they could totally not be fine, if they didn't tell you it was an embarrassing problem, or they don't.
so what leads a person to be impatient
Pressure.
in a relationship? In a relationship.
Well, being just tired.
Selfishness.
So it could be selfishness.
Yeah,
Mhm,
it's
mhm.
selfishness, you want it done your way. and if they're not doing
Different
it-
viewpoints.
Right,
Different
right.
viewpoints. Mhm. So-
Not accepting.
Tired, I think. I mean, if you talk about your family that you live with day in, day out,
Mhm.
I mean, I think when we're tired, we have less.
Maybe we should play the Sinatra song to explain.
My way, yeah.
If you have young children, you're
Yeah.
always tired.
Yeah.
And you're less
Yeah.
patient, and you, sometimes you use up, you kind of feel like you used up all your patience with your kids during the day, and when your husband comes home, you just don't have any left, so.
I think respect is also in there.
Respect. Yeah.
You know, we are very close to another couple who we've known for 50 years, and they are total trumpers, okay?
Mhm.
So we have to respect what they have
Mhm.
and not let it interfere with our friendship.
Right. Yep.
We just don't talk about it.
Yeah, no, yeah, and that's true for a lot of people in a lot of relationships. I've heard of so many instances because of political views and differences of people having to unfriend and all of that.
We used to discuss this.
Yeah.
We can't discuss this
Mhm.
anymore because, you know, neither one will relinquish what
Mhm.
they believe.
So we'll do a little role play here, and let's see if I can come up with a good, quick example.
Do it in 10 seconds.
Yeah, I know it. Do it in 10 seconds.
Very good, all right.
When I started riding my bike a lot,
Yeah,
she was always like very grumpy, she would wave every single day.
Yeah.
I run by her, I'd like smile, say good morning,
yeah,
and like 6 months later, she started saying good morning back, and I felt such
Yeah.
a sense of satisfaction, I'm like, I did it.
Yeah, yeah. She finally responded. Yeah. Yeah. So my thought is that if you are at peace with yourself, if you feel good about yourself, if you feel that you are loved, doesn't that tend to increase your ability to be patient with others?
Your cup runneth over. In other words, if your cup isn't full, you don't have enough. to
Yeah.
give.
I think where people become impatient, underlying it is, who is he or who is she to say that to me or do that to me? You know, I don't deserve that. I'm not going to take it. Okay. And I think that the more you are filled with the love from above, I think the more you're at peace with yourself and the more you're able to be patient. Now, patience doesn't mean that you have to keep putting yourself in a position where you're going to be used or taken advantage. Right. Yeah. But you always keep the door open. You always keep the door open. And, you know, what I see here is Mary with a love that is patient. And yes, part of it is because it's her son. But, you know, I think she also, you know, I think with the fact that, you know, she's chosen, she knows that, you know, she is going to, that she was chosen by God.
He must have thought she's equipped to handle it.
Right, exactly. So,
I'm sorry.
I said she must, God must have thought that Mary was equipped to handle the role he gave her.
Right.
So,
Right. And so that allows, I think, her to feel good about herself. And so when things get choppy and difficult, she is able to patiently continue to love. Yes, Don?
I look at motherhood is that tremendous opportunity. A mother is given this impossibly fragile gift, a child, and has the desire, I assume through nurturing or an obligation, to bring this child along so it can be on its own.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a loving act of itself. Nurturing is a loving act.
Mm-hmm.
And women have an opportunity, men can walk away from it. I mean, in other species of life, they do. They walk away, and including in our species, they walk away. But the responsibility is there, and the gift is there, the opportunity to learn and interact with love with a totally open being, that child,
Mm-hmm.
and to share one's own love and grow. The opportunity for growth for a woman through that nurturing process is just an immense gift from God. That's the way I've always looked at it. And maybe I'm not a big mother, but that strikes me as what a wonderful opportunity we have. And that growth over the years, because now you've grown together a bit, you've shared yourself with that being. As that being grows and changes and becomes that independent being that we all become in time, and that break when the early teenage years that all societies have, like the
Well, so-
as they said, you still have that love there because you've gone through that process. And to me, a mother's love is, I always use the term, that's the
So
big
I get-
love,
I
which
get
is
myself,
patient.
many years ago, I was first starting out, I got myself into big trouble in a sermon. And I think it's related to what you said, just said, Don. In a sermon, and it was a Mother's Day sermon, and I said something to the effect of you will always be the mother, but that person will not always be your child.
I can see how you got into trouble.
Yeah, I can see how you get in trouble with that.
But the point being that child signifies toddler.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I would say is you will always be that person's mother. The day will come when they will be your adult son or daughter, not your child.
but it's still,
But they're still your child.
I still call him my baby. He's my baby. That's fine. And he's like, wait a minute.
So,
And that was really the reference I was getting at.
yeah, that's why I thought of
The
it.
relationship will change because you both change. You have aged and they have aged.
Mhm.
And in the process of development of that, we do go different ways.
Yeah.
Doesn't
So-
change one relationship, but it creates other relationships. And that's what the Bible is about, teaching you how to handle those.
So,
So obviously I raised my kids.
Yeah.
In the age where, there's no spanking
Yeah.
or corporal discipline or anything like that. And the parenting expert psychology people, the advice they say is, like, the thing that will keep your kid alive when they're a teenager is like the bond of love
Mhm.
that you form with them when they're little.
yeah,
And that's like the only, it is true, it's basically like you can like ground them and stuff like
Yeah.
that, but the only thing that keeps kids like on the side of right, sort of, or doing what, at least somewhat what you want them to do when they're teenagers, is the
Mhm.
fact that they love you and they
Right.
don't wanna disappoint you.
That's right.
And that's like, so it's so important.
So,
that love,
yeah.
The bond.
Since-
But even Jesus didn't want to do what his mother said, but he did it.
I think the love
True.
between a mother and a son is like a book, it just has different chapters.
Okay.
For
mhm,
pre-birth, actually, you're taking care of the
Mhm.
fetus and all that, thing, watching your health, their health. And every book is a chapter.
mhm,
Being a mother, you don't, sometimes you say, oh, I wish you were a little bit, you don't really mean that.
Yeah.
You don't want to go and reread that book.
No.
Yeah.
Well, we have run out of time. I thank you all. and we will
Do we help at all?
somewhat.